Welcome back to a new season of the Slow Style Home podcast. You know, I always seem to forget to tell you when I'm taking a couple of weeks break, so I'm sorry for that. But yes, we're back. And my guest today is designer Jo Berryman. She's got a gorgeous book out called Expressive Interiors. And if you're up for a design adventure, this book and conversation is going to be right up your alley. I encourage you, as does Jo, to be fearless in whatever way you're able to, at whatever pace feels good to you, because the aim is to create a one-of-a-kind home that perfectly suits your needs, motivates you to pursue your dreams, and fills your soul. And at the end, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to jump in with a few comments of my own, pulling out the key lessons that I really want you to pay attention to from this episode. So stick around for that. All right, let's jump in with Jo. Jo Berryman, welcome to the Slow Style Home podcast.
Hi, Xander. Thank you for having me and reaching out. Your content is just so beautiful.
I'm so excited about this beautiful book, Expressive Interiors. Right away, the cover. If I had to pick my favorite room in this book, which would be hard, as I'm sure it would be hard for you as well. But it probably is this room, which is, I believe, your living room.
Yep.
And that Pierre Frey wallpaper with the blue splatter paint, it's just
goodness.
Everything.
Wow, I am so impressed that you know that it's Pierre Frey, hey? That's wow,
well,
you're in the know. Amazing.
One design geek to another.
For sure. Respect, yeah.
But I want to just start off right away by asking you, who is this book for? And I feel like in this book, there's a lot of what I would call high design in it. There's a lot of attention to lineage, heritage, where things come from, who's made them. So it's going to appeal to people who work in design or who are passionate like I am. But you also, I feel like it's almost like a plea to the rest of us, to all of us, everyday homeowners, to just be bold, be yourself, take the bull by the horns and just make your home your own. Is that fair?
Oh my goodness, you couldn't have take the bull by the horns. I mean, that's basically what the book is in a nutshell.
Oh, good.
It's for anyone who is just longing to go on a bit of a design adventure, or anyone who is color curious, or just basically wants to have a good old nose at the way people live, who genuinely embrace unconventionality, authenticity, and are just utterly fearless. And I think that's something we all want to be. I know it's something that I've been working on for years and years and years. It's just to embrace my inner design warrior and just be utterly fearless. And in this day and age, it's so hard to uphold that, especially as a woman sometimes, where you feel, oh my goodness, maybe I need to tone everything. Actually, no, it's an opportunity for us all just to dive in and just really live how you want to live.
So you mentioned two things. One, women sometimes have trouble being fearless, but then also it made me think of aging. And how when you age, you feel like, there's so many things you can't wear because I'm too old for that. That will make me look ridiculous. And I mean, I do feel that way myself. I mean, I get that feeling. But in our homes, it's almost the reverse of that, the older you get, the less you should care about anybody but yourself. And what
for sure. Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. Really, we should just express ourselves however we choose to. And I think we all have an internal moderator, don't we, within?
We do.
And, sometimes we choose to listen, sometimes we don't. I tend to err on not listening. But, I'm very conscious that not everyone is initially willing to jump on the whole fearless bandwagon. I get it. So It's a gentle coaxing also, which is why I've broken up each chapter with just quite simple lessons on how to kind of achieve various looks.
Yes. And I love the lessons. I love how every chapter is sort of wrapped up in a design lesson. So it's definitely an inspirational book because the photos of the rooms are front and center, and the rooms themselves are just they speak volumes, but then these lessons that you write at the end of the chapter actually give us something much more practical to work to, or hands-on to work with.
For sure. I think it was as much about wanting it to feel all inclusive and accessible. Hence the reason why I sort of wove in the lessons into each chapter.
Yes, that word accessible interiors, accessible design or decor. I'm always trying to figure out why someone isn't up for mixing things together in ways that are really interesting or unique to them. And I think a lot of it is the fear of doing things wrong, quote unquote wrong, or of making choices that to others will seem crazy or over the top. But I also hear a lot of pushback to these bold expressive rooms that are in your book with things like, well, I just don't like maximalism, or I don't like a lot of clutter, or I only like neutral colors. And I never know if that's really how they feel or if that's just what they're used to seeing.
I'm so certain it's because it's what they're used to seeing. And that's not to dismiss neutrals per se, because I have a lot of respect for neutrals and neutrality within design. And often I find neutrality can underpin some of my boldest statements, certainly in the work that I produce for clients. I go on a very sort of rigorous process with my clients, and it's questions, and it's not necessarily about design. It's about food that they love, music that they're into, fashion that they love, records that they listened to when they were kids. And it's from that I then discern, okay, I know where we're working now. I know we've got some sort of palette to work with. So whether it's like a favorite record, or sometimes I get presented with a beautiful family heirloom and says, look, I love this. My grandmother gave me this. I would love my bedroom to somehow be imbued with the essence of this.
Right.
And I go, cool, that's great. That's amazing. I love that.
Right.
And then with them, we go on this journey, and then they say, oh, yes, I like that. Oh, I didn't know I liked green. Oh, my goodness. Actually, no, I love peach. Right. Oh, peach and green go so beautifully together. Right. I have to go for it. You know, much the same way if you go shopping with a girlfriend and they say, try that dress on. You're like, no way, I'm not going to try that on. And you put it on and it's like, oh my goodness, it's just the most exquisite thing you've ever tried.
Right.
I sometimes feel like, oh my goodness, I'm sort of caught up in this sort of menage a trois with like the husband and the wife, you know,
it's intimate.
It is super intimate. This is the thing. It's a super intimate process. But I think once we've crossed that intimacy barrier, that's when the trust sets in. And that's when I think collectively we have the most fun.
You're describing where the magic is, and what designers, really good designers, do so well is that they translate the essence, as you said, of that heirloom object into an entire room.
Exactly.
And trust was another word that you used.
For sure.
So important. And I think trusting ourselves too. We don't trust ourselves to know what we truly love, because we've been told that we don't know what we love. Right.
Yes.
And
you're told to love certain things,
X,
or you're told that you need X in your life, or you need this in your life in order to be this.
Yes, absolutely. And so that's no wonder we've lost trust, right? I mentioned your living room, and the rest of your home is also in this book so beautifully. And there are a lot of, I almost hate to use the word maximalist, because I think that then people get this
one-dimensional view
of what maximalism is. To me, maximalism is that there's something about the room that has an impact on our experience, our emotions. So sometimes maximalism is a white room with this incredible art installation, and that's all that's in it, right?
Totally.
Yes, but there are also a couple of homes in this book that describe as minimalist. I'm speaking specifically of two homes. One is by, and I'm going to mess up this name, João
Botelho. Exactly. That he's from Brazil.
Brazil. And Sophie Donnet.
Yes. My God. Oh,
they're sort of minimal in that there's a lot of neutrality going on.
No. It's so
warm. They're so warm. Tell us why do these rooms feel so expressive?
I know. It's so interesting that you flagged these two particular homes. If I start with Joao first, he worked very closely with some local architects. And I think we must be mindful not to dismiss architectural detail. That in itself can be extraordinary. Right. And can speak volumes, because you see how the light floods in through those ecclesiastical windows, right, or how a shadow takes hold in the bedroom, you know. Yes. All of this is just intentional. Joao's home is set within an old church, so that in itself has a kind of temple-like quality. There is just an innate serenity and calm. And he just loves luxury, and he loves textiles, and he worked at Donna Karan for many years, actually. So he's kind of very well versed in luxury. Oh, yeah. Just the fusion of the linearity and the architectural elements with a plush sort of mossy mohair just speaks volumes, you know? Right. And just the elegant shapes of, like, his furniture. It's like, I called it Nouveau Deco because there is a slight nod to Art Deco, certainly furniture within that era, but it just has a slightly sort of space-agey take on it, or just a slightly more minimal, sort of modern 21st century take, at least.
You're right, right. And the attention seems to be on the shape of things.
Oh, totally.
Maybe, and the room that's left over for the greenery, the view is really...
It's stunning. No, it's utterly, no, it's beautiful. And then you have this incredible kind of sculpture of a staircase that kind of punctuates that. I mean, it's such a primary focus of the room. Right. And also, he's a lover of art. He's an avid art collector. He has lots of black and white photographs and some really interesting abstracts too, that, you know, as you know, art brings so much into a space.
Yes, right.
And with Sophie, similarly, it's interesting because hers is the complete antithesis to Joao's space. It's a rustic finca set within the Campo, next to mountains in Ibiza. But somehow, I think it also has a lot to do with the use of, it's almost like a stucco finish. Like a tadlac, like you see it in Moroccan riads.
Yeah.
Which makes her home actually feel quite cavernous and womb-like in parts. So rather than just having a piece of furniture built in, it's the bathroom vanity is like literally sculpted into the room, you know. It's like the room gave birth to it. And I think rather than loads of pieces of furniture, she's deeply spiritual, and she loves lots of kind of spirituality. She has lots of talismans dotted throughout the house. She's created lots of little niches, little shrines throughout, just kind of cluttered with familial paraphernalia. Yeah. Etchings from loved ones, children's drawings, candles, feathers, crystals, all sorts of wonderful, just everyday paraphernalia that somehow, when given a space, is suddenly elevated into something quite holy, you know?
It perfectly represents the title of your book, Expressive Interiors. I mean, there's many things you could have called this book. You could have called it Bold Interiors. You could have called it Fearless Interiors. Expressive. Yes. To me, when after going through the book and then going back to the title, I think you're talking about expressing oneself from the inside out. And this is certainly what's happening. Really, it's happening in all of these homes.
I went on many iterations with the title. Initially, the working title was going to be called Rebellious. I love the sound of rebellious, and I loved what it connotes. Yeah. But as I was sort of going through the process, it felt, actually, this isn't rebellion. This is really, truly people emoting from the inside out. That's not rebellion. That's something far more beautiful. Expressive really feels like the perfect title for the book.
Yes, it does.
What I hopefully have illustrated within the book is just how actually, with all this paraphernalia, there is a way that it can be displayed with abandon and displayed wholeheartedly. But there also is some meaning, and it's not actually, it's not haphazard. Like, there is a reason these objects have landed here.
It's very purposeful, and it's very intentional, and it's very...
That's the key. Intentional, exactly. Yeah. Intentional without being contrived.
Oh, yes. And actually, that brings us right to the lessons. Let's just pull out one or two that you like. And those of you listening, the lessons are things on scale and pattern, color, texture. What do you think is one that you really want people to learn about that maybe isn't talked about very much?
I think, gosh, if I had to pull one out, probably I think harmony and discord resonates
Oh, my
with most.
One is one of my favorites.
Yes,
Yes, one of my
because
favorites.
it just seems so improbable. And look, I have to cite William Blake. William Blake famously said, "Without contraries, there is no progression." And I just love that. Just resonates with me so wholeheartedly, particularly within this particular lesson and world, harmony and discord. You need it. You need the dynamism of the polarities.
So for people who are listening and maybe don't have the book in front of them, what's an example of what that looks like?
Okay, so I use a lot of it within my own personal space.
Yes.
So I have a lot of stone and a lot of architectural finishes all around me, but I love to soften all the architecture with very sumptuous sofas, really soft, quite florid cushions, velvets. I'm a huge fan of lace. I love that juxtaposition of quite industrial concrete with grandmother's lace. The improbable duality for me creates a lot of drama and fun. And there is also a way that you can visually discord with patterns. I love employing pattern clash. I love a graphic wallpaper. I use it a lot. I use it throughout. I've used it within my home. I use it in a lot of clients' homes. But what I often love to do is bring on another graphic wallpaper or a graphic fabric or a graphic texture of some sort and purposefully jar them, but jar them in a way that it enhances rather than disrupts fully.
Right.
And look, when you properly collapse into color and pattern and really have a fearless approach, I really think something changes because I think you see the endless possibilities.
It reminds me of your lesson on the transitional spaces, the hallways and things.
Yes, connecting spaces, correct. Transitional spaces. Yes, they're always these unsung parts of the home.
Yeah.
And they're just as vital because they are the sutures, aren't they?
Yes.
Between each space. And I'm so glad you bring that up because often people forget. People forget about these, like the hallway stairs. Like I love like a crazy runner along a staircase that somehow brings in some of the elements that you've been using throughout the rest of the house, or adding a feature wall along a corridor.
Right. And putting a big, huge piece of artwork in a hallway.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe mostly people would leave that wall completely blank. It's dramatic and it directs you toward a destination almost.
Oh my goodness. Well, exactly. Having a focal point. We can create these little pockets of interest throughout. And you don't need copious amounts of square footage in order to create drama and interest. You know, one of the projects I featured, my gorgeous friend Alex, who has this really sweet Victorian home just by the sea. And her home is a real masterclass in literally styling on a shoestring. Everything within her home has either been pilfered through a skip, found in a junk shop, or literally hand sewn by her. And the effect is just marvelous. It's so
I'm glad you bring that up because I was going to say that in all fairness, some of these homes, like you said, the architecture itself is so fabulous that you've got this canvas to start from that's already so elevated. But what about starting with nothing? And I bring up this person that's in the book and her home. And so tell us a little bit about that. I mean, not just her, but where would you splurge and where would you save?
That's such an interesting question. For me, it's like splurging is something I do so rarely, but when I do, I am a stickler for really high design, like sofas, tables, like dining tables, chairs, lighting. Yeah. For me, they're like the jewels within one's home. And I think if you've got those kind of core ingredients, then I think anything else that you weave in between would actually look amazing. I mean, I love art, and I know we all, you know, art is, it can be very alienating at times because everyone speaks of having these being collectors or having these burgeoning collections, and not always an economical feasibility, is it? However, there are so many brocantes or flea markets. You could have an absolute field day just chancing upon little treasures that delight. And I think if you find, I don't know, let's say you're obsessed with ceramics, if you find a ceramic and somehow elevate it in a way, and I say elevate, like give it pride of place. I find plinths are very helpful. Yes. So display plinths, sort of suspended on a wall. I think there's something about this, the modality of display, And I think when you find gorgeous objects and you display them with utter reverence, suddenly they're elevated into high art. And then this you can be much more playful and sort of less hung up on, oh my God, is this high art? Is this not high art? Is this too kitsch?
Right.
Kitsch is wonderful. I love kitsch. But I think overuse can be a little bit heady, or is a bit heady for me,
Too thematic or too
exactly cliche or
Well, you don't fit into a box. There's no style category. And that's what I respond so wonderfully to is it's true eclectic design. And by that, I mean, it is a very intentional mix of eras and styles and fabrics and colors and materials and textures. And
you're right. It's an absolute carousel.
But it's intentional. It's beautiful. And that's why I love this book. And I really encourage people to go to the show notes page of this episode to see some of the photos and then go buy the book, because it's such a permission slip to try some of this yourself. And I think that once you have the bones, like you're saying, like that very well-made couch or that beautiful table, once you have those bones, then the experimentation with all of the other layers.
Oh, totally. And you can have fun with it, because it's not just about creating, we get so fixated on the space being static. Let's face it, a dynamic home is alive, a dynamic home is a happy one,
Right. 100%. That's such a beautiful way to wrap this up. Jo, this has been so fun, and I love your passion, and thank you for your work.
Oh, thank you, Zandra. Thank you for inviting me onto your podcast. I feel so thrilled to be part of this beautiful, beautiful show.
Okay, now, like I said, I'm going to jump in with some of my own thoughts based on this conversation. Jo's work reflects her desire to pull out the most fearless wishes of her clients, even the ones that are kind of buried deep down. And she does that by first getting to the essence of what a client wants to feel and experience in each room of their homes. Like Jo's example of a grandmother's hand-me-down that the client wanted to imbue an entire room with. You take that inspirational starting point and you find ways of expressing its physical characteristics and its personal meaning into your design decisions on furniture and focal points and colors and materials, etc. And this is how you don't get lost in a sea of decor choices and inspiration that we are all overwhelmed with. You start with something that's meaningful and personal to you, and that's your vision, and you start from there. Trust was another thing that Jo talked about. She digs deep into her clients' passions and motivations and histories to the point where they trust that she knows them well enough to make great decisions for them. And that's what you need to develop for yourself. Trust in your own knowledge of what you truly love and what you want to surround yourself with. Jo also talked about the mix of harmony and discord, and I think a lot of us shy away from that. When we don't trust our own eye for design, we look outside ourselves to evaluate whether things, quote unquote, go together. And the more unconventional the pairings are, the more we worry. So let me say something that I've said before, maybe in different ways, which is that you don't have to be born with a special gene that allows you to be creative. You simply need to give yourself that permission. And I always recommend being creative with what you already own. First, at the start, move things around, make unusual pairings, try out different objects and furniture in different rooms, play with vignettes, all before you buy something new if you're worried about spending money on something that might be a mistake. And when I say mistake, I don't mean someone else telling you that something doesn't go together. I mean that a mistake where you end up not liking the result. And finally, I want to reiterate one of my favorite things that Jo said. She said, when you properly collapse into color and pattern and have a fearless approach, something changes because you start to see the endless possibilities. And by the way, I don't think she meant just collapsing into color and pattern per se. She meant giving yourself over to everything you love in decor and design. But the part about seeing endless possibilities, that's been so true in my own experience. Starting out, going from copying the masters in magazines and books to trying out lots of things and making mistakes to finding my own way toward my one-of-a-kind aesthetic. What happens is that when you break the rules and you move beyond expectations when it comes to your home, you'll find that your mind opens up to possibilities in every other area of your life that you hadn't even known were out there. It's incredibly joyful to fill your time by following your curiosity, even if you only have to spare 15 minutes a week. I believe that expanding our sense of what's possible is what keeps us all going. Now, I know this is a lot to digest, and I haven't exactly told you how to do all of this, but hopefully this episode and Jo's book will have at least helped you understand why it's also worth it. So if you want to know the hows, if you want the step-by-step, you can find it in the Slow Style framework. The confidence you're looking for, the ways to avoid mistakes, the steps to take to master the mix, it's all found in the process of envision, experiment, execute, and enrich. I teach that inside the Slow Style framework. So go to slowstylehome.com and click on coaching to learn more. Maybe we can work together.